Now that your map is complete, our next step is to assign each block a spot on the map. As you know from when you made your map, there are only going to be so many choices that you can make. But within the constraints of block sizes, color, we'll figure out exactly where to put each block. To color your map, this is what you're going to need. You're going to need a copy of your map. You're going to need your stack of blocks flipped upside down so the largest block is on top. You're going to need a nice fat Sharpie, a couple scraps of paper, and some color crayons. So our first thing, take our Sharpie, and we're going to divide our map into 4 sections. These will be our 4 sewing sections. What you want to do is look for natural breaks on the map to put your lines. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to work across. So I'm putting just a line. I can't go across that large block. So I'm going to go up and over, down. All right, so there's my first division, going from left to right. Make it bright so you can see it. Now I need to divide it from top to bottom. So I'm going to start here. And it really doesn't matter where those lines are. These are just breaking it into 4 sewing sections and 4 sections to work with. It'll make it easier. If you make one section bigger than the other, it's not a big deal. They all get sewn together in the end. But this is just going to help you divide everything up and make things easier to work with. So I could either come over here and down, or I can go over here and down. And I'm going to just go over here and work my way down. All right, so I have 4 sewing sections. 1, 2, 3, 4. Doesn't matter how you count or number them. I'm going to number 1, I'm going to number 2, I'm going to number 3, and I'm going to number 4. So I have 4 sewing sections. As we lay out the quilt, we're going to be dividing these t-shirts into 4 sections. So to help keep them straight in your mind, grab some scrap paper and write your numbers on them. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's where you're going to stack your blocks as they go into each particular section here. So we're going to start with the very largest block. I like to start with the larger blocks first because these blocks are more prominent in your quilt and have more weight on your quilt. And so they need to be thought about and put in first. So our first block we have is this big, beautiful owl. And he's our centerpiece because he's the largest piece. So then I'm going to go over to my color crayons. And I'm going to search around, and you'll probably have to search around through your color crayons, and you're going to find a dark black color crayon. All right, black color crayon, black shirt. This is the block. He's going to go in section 4. So I'm just going to color him in really quick. Once that black block is colored, I know that I don't want to put any other black blocks right next to that one. I don't need any more information than that. It's just a quick cue when you're laying out what you have. So I take my shirt and I'm going to put it over here in section 4. Then I go down to my next blocks. My next size blocks are these big, tall blocks, and they're 2 identical ones. So I'm going to take those 2 identical blocks and I'm going to put them in opposite corners. I knew when I made this map that these were identical blocks. That's why I chose to put them in opposite corners. It would have looked really silly if I'd put them next to each other. So opposite corner. They're blue, they're colorful, they're the only blocks of that size in that quadrant, so I don't need too much information. I just need a little bit of information to tell me, okay, these are big owls, they're kind of blue, so I can put some eyeballs there. I'm going to grab some purple, put some eyelashes on them. That's all I need, just a little bit of information to tell me which block to pick up when it's time to sew. So that one goes in section 1. This one goes in section 3. So then I go to my next piece. This is a great owl. He's kind of brown and kind of blue and kind of tan. He's going to go up in this position. I'm looking for a yellowish crayon that kind of represents that. This is the only block I have in this section that's this color, this size. So I don't need too much information. So I'm just gonna, he's kind of a bluish guy. I'm just gonna grab some blue, make some eyes and some things. And I'm just giving myself enough information that I know to grab that shirt when it's time to sew. Put them in block section 2. On to this light blue bird. He also only has one position to go into, so we're just going to put him right into that position. I don't need too much information because he's the only guy of that size, but I do need to know kind of what color he is so I can decide what to or not put next to him. All right, now we're going on to our 16 by 20s. I have quite a few of these 16 by 20s. And I have a lot of different locations to put them on the map. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different locations. And I have 2 in the upper right quadrant and 2 here. So I need to decide which ones to go where. So let's start with this little guy. It's kind of a turquoise-ish, tealish color. Search through your crayons. Found a color close enough. And I am going to put him here. So I'm going to give myself a little information about what this guy is. He's part turquoise, he's part purple. And that's all I need to know about him. So I'm going to put him in spot 4. Next is our guy with our pipe. I'm going to put up here next to this dark colored block. That way I go dark, light, and I can break up the colors. You don't want to have all your dark colors in one part of the map and all your light colors in the other part of the map. It'll look unbalanced and uninteresting. So I'm going to put this light guy next to this darker guy here. All right, so now we're on to this really beautiful owl here. And while you're doing this, please watch yourself. You're going to get pinned. You're going to get pricked by your pins because you have pins in these. All right, so he's a fairly dark blue. So I'm going to look for a crayon. So I'm going to take this guy. I'm going to mark him. I'm going to put him in this block. He's kind of got yellow eyes, and he's kind of got blue the rest of the way around him. I can distinguish these 2 blocks now. I know this block is fairly basically one color, and this one has blue and yellow. So when I go to sew these, I'll know exactly which block to pick up. All right, so I have a dark black here, and I have a blue here, and I've come across this white shirt. I'm going to put this guy here because he's fairly light. I really don't need too much information about this. He's the only block in this quadrant of that size. I'm just going to put a quick circle. Reminds me that it's a circle, and that's all I really need to know about that block to be able to put it in the right position. All right, so we are down to our last guy here. And he's got some red on him, and he's put him right here. And just give myself a little bit of information, just enough so I can distinguish this block from this block. And they both go into section 4. Now we continue to work on down your pile of shirts. So we come across 16 by 16. I only have one 16 by 16, so I need just to let myself remember what this is when I look for that 16 by 16. Here's our 16 by 16 right here. And he's got 2 eyes and he's got a necklace. That's all I need to know about him because he's going to be the only 16 by 16 in that quadrant to go to. So he goes into number 3. Then continue working down. By having your blocks flipped over, you automatically start with the largest blocks first. So I have 2 blocks. I have a maroon one and I have a gray one. So I want to find a maroon crayon and a gray crayon. You just use the black real light. So I've got 2 blocks, 2 birds, one here and one here. I'm going to put this bird right here. And I'm going to put this guy right there, nice and light. Kind of got a little circle. These are the only 2 blocks of these sizes in each of these quadrants. So it doesn't matter how much information I have here, just enough to let me know. So this is going to go in 2, and this is going to go in 3. All right, we're on to our 12 by 16s. And I have 1, 2, 3 in one quadrant, 1 in one quadrant, 1 in one quadrant. All right, so I have a black one, a green one, kind of a off-white one, a very dark one, and a blue one. So I need to think about where I want to put these in relationship to the other shirts. I'm going to start with this blue guy. He's right. I'm going to start with him, and I'm going to put him next to the black block. He's a little bit lighter, and he's pretty interesting, so I'm going to put him closer to the beginning of the quilt, to the center of that quilt. All right, so I have this dark guy, and I have fairly light blocks along the bottom, so I'm going to put him in between the two lighter blocks, and there's another dark guy right there, so they are offset from one another. Now I have another black one, and I'm going to put him also in the bottom quadrant, kind of balancing these guys out. Number 4. All right, we have a bright green one and a fairly lightweight one left. I think I'm going to put this bright green guy next to the big guy in the center. He's kind of fun, and it's going to really look fun there. So I'll put that in 3. And then this guy, I'll have to put him in 2. And all I have to do is mark an X, because that's all I need to know about this one. All right, we have an 8 by 16. And we only have one 8 by 16. It's white. I'm just going to put an X there. That's all I need to know. And then I'm going to go on to another set. I've got a lot of 12 by 12s. A lot of times you are going to have a huge stack of 12 by 12s. So sometimes I look at them and I break them up in my mind. This stack, they're pretty similar. Not a lot of decisions to make. Oh, there's another one. So I'm going to look and think about what I want to do. I've got a lot of dark down here, so I'm going to take this white owl and I'm going to put him down in the bottom to kind of lighten up that bottom quadrant. So I have a blue and a black and a royal blue. So basically these two will read very similar to one another. And the royal blue will kind of have a little pop to it. So I'm going to put the royal blue down here so it kind of balances the two other blues that we have. So I have kind of a triangle here with royal blue. I have a triangle here of black. So I have them spaced out from one another. So this blue will go in number 4. So I have 2 more left. I have a black one and a dark blue one. So to me, it doesn't matter where either of these go. So I'm just going to choose one here. That's a really dark blue. If it's not dark enough, just run over it with another crayon so you know, okay, that's the darker blue, number 3. And then I have the black one I'm going to put up at the top. And that goes in number 2. I'm going to grab this one owl who's an 8 by 8. He's the only one. I might as well just drop him in there because that's all I need to know is that this one goes here and I can put it over there. So now I'm down to 3 8 by 12s. And I have 3 spots. 1, 2, 3. So I need to decide which one should go where. Now I'm going to need a red crayon and a navy crayon. I'm going to take this red one and put it over here because I'm seeing this looks fairly lightweight right now. So I'll put some red in there. That goes into group 1. I have a white one and a navy one. So this is, I know, a lighter blue. So I'm going to put the navy one here. That's going to be darker. And then this is just a white one. I'm just going to put them right there to lighten up this area here. And that goes in number 4. So now that I have all those blocks done, I can put in my fillers that I have. If you find that you have more blocks than you have spaces on your map, let's say you forgot to count and map one of these blocks, what do? Guess what? You have to start all over. You have to go back, unsort the blocks, restack them by size, and recount, refigure the size of your quilt, and do the layout again. This is why I said it's so important to count very accurately. Now you will have, in some of your maps, blocks that you have blank spots for. And that's what fillers are for. So I have a number of fillers that I've cut that will go in these blank spots. When you lay out your quilt, consider the blocks that you put on the edge of the quilt. The binding will cut off a little bit of the edge of the block. So give yourself extra margin on the blocks that are on the edge. On the top edge, on the bottom, right and left edge. Make sure that you have extra margin along here. Another thing you should consider is the action on your shirt. Graphics tend to have some sort of motion. For example, this owl right here, he is looking up this direction. If I put him on the outside of the quilt, my eyes would go from here off the quilt. You want to try to keep your viewers' eyes tracking onto the quilt. This owl right here has no motion, no action. He's pretty stationary, so I put him in the center of the quilt. So look at your shirts, even look at the numbers on the shirts. What way, when you look at that shirt, is your eye tracking? Keep your eye tracking onto the quilt and not off your quilt. Another consideration is 2 blocks coming from the same shirt. You want to make sure that you divide those off on your quilt. So for example, in this quilt, we have this block and this block came from the same shirt. So we put them in opposite corners so that they would not clash with each other and to break our attention up. If they were both next to each other in the center, it would just look really silly. Now that you have your map completed and you don't have any leftover blocks, we are next going to proof ourselves and make sure that what we've put in our stacks is actually what's in this section. So let's start with section number 1 here. I grab my blocks. And I'm going to start right here looking for this block. So this is this block right here. So I know I have this block. One of the things you can do is put a little check mark there or a line through it, just something so that you know in your mind that, yep, I've accounted for that block. My next block is going to be this block, which, if we remember right, was this guy. You're going to have to watch out for pins. If you have pins, they're going to prick you and you're going to go, ouch. So I've got that block. My next block I need is this block right here. And this is one of my fillers that I've cut earlier. And so I'm going to just put him right there. All right, I know I've got that block. I know I have that block. So why did I choose these blocks to look at first rather than this block, then this block, then this block? Well, when I'm putting these, checking these and double checking them, I'm actually thinking in my head, how am I going to sew these? So when I open up this section, I will sew these 2 blocks first, and then I'll sew this seam. So I want these blocks really close to one another so I can grab them and not have to search through my pile of blocks looking for what I need. So I'm going to continue around and grab the other blocks that I need. So next I needed this blue block here. There he is. Then I needed this green block. This block is a 4x8, and there he is. And eventually when I sew him, he'll go right there. Next, I need this other large block, and that's easy. That's the only block that's big that I have left. So I can stack him on top. So I can check that I've gotten all those blocks. And then the last 2 blocks is this red one and this dark one. There we go. I've got all that blocks in section number 1. So now that I've got this section number 1 completed, I just simply roll this up. And depending on the type of material in your t-shirts, sometimes you might have a slippery block. I have a lot of slippery fabric in this one. Other times you'll have blocks that are more sticky and they'll stick to each other. I grab my box that I keep my quilt in. And then I take my block, I rolled up a set of blocks for section number 1, and I simply lay them in my box ready to sew. Then I move on to section number 2. Grab that. And I want to look at this in my mind and think, what are my sewing areas? What am I going to sew? I'm going to sew these 2 blocks to each other. This is kind of a section here, and this is kind of a section. So I'm going to start here, then work my way this way. So this was that really tall, skinny block. All right, so I have him. And directly below him will be this other block. That's another tall, skinny one. And he's going to go directly below. Mark that off. Now I want to look for this next large block. And that circle reminds me, it was this white one. It's a 16 by 20, and that's a 16 by 20. There he is. So now I want to find this little red 4x4, that filler. And then I want to find this 12 by 20 because I will be sewing that little filler to this 12 by 20. So I'm actually going to restack it with this on top. That's going to get sewed to the bottom. And then this filler is going to get sewed up here to this bird. So I'm kind of having them stacked in areas that I can sew. So I'm going to go over, and there's our green. So we're going to check these off. I've got them. Then I want this block, then the blue, then the gray, And then lastly, the black. All right, so there's sewing section number 2. I have all the blocks. I have them lined up in a sewing configuration. I roll them up and I put them in my box. I'm putting them in order 1, 2, 3, 4, so that when I go back to the box, I can choose, I want to start with sewing section 1, and I can grab 1. Instead of having to open up and go, well, what section do I have? If I have them lined up according to my map, it makes sewing much easier. All right, so let's grab section number 3. That is this section. And I'm kind of in my mind, I visualize it as, this is kind of an area I'm going to sew. I'm going to sew this area, and I'm going to sew these together. So I'm going to start with this really big block. I'll set him here. And then I want to find this block. It was a white 16 by 16 with one with a necklace on it. There he is. And that's just enough information there. So now I need to find this block. Sometimes you're going to be going through these and can't find something. You're going to be looking and looking. You might have to stop and look at other stacks if you can't find what you're looking for. You might not have actually put it in there. So this takes a lot of thinking. It can be a lot of fun because you can really start seeing how the quilt's coming together, but you have to be very accurate, because if you start sewing and you don't have a block, you're going to get halfway through sewing and you're going to have a big empty spot in your quilt. And if you have a big empty spot, you're either going to have to buy a shirt, find a shirt, or take your whole quilt apart and start again. It's easier now to go through and look at everything really carefully, make sure you have it all before you begin the sewing process. All right, so I got this guy, cross him off, and I need this 8 by 4, and then I needed a 4 by 4, and then I needed there's another 4 by 4, and let's search through my blocks. There's that block, and there's that block, and then I can go over this way. Before I go over this way, I'm going to find this block. There she is. There's this filler block. Now that we have completed coloring our map, our blocks are all rolled up into sewing sections, we are ready to go to the sewing machine.